Hi, welcome to True Creeps, where the stories are true and the creeps are real. We'll cover stories from grotesque gore to the possibly plausible paranormal, to horrifying history, to tense and terrible true crime, and everything else that goes bump in the night. We're your hosts, Amanda, and I'm Lindsay, and we want you to join us while we creep. We cover mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Hey everybody, welcome to our third Halloween true crime episode. Today we're going to be talking about the murder of John Altinger and the attack on Gilles Tetreault in Canada. Both of these crimes were committed by Mark Twitchell, who was ultimately arrested on Halloween of 2008. Twitchell is thought to have been inspired by the book/TV show Dexter, so he was dubbed the Dexter Killer.
Lindsay.
Yes.
I've actually seen this show.
A show that Amanda has watched. How exciting.
It's pre-child. It came out pre-child. So
Heard.
Yeah.
So if you haven't watched Dexter or read the books, that's okay. We're going to talk a little bit about what the book and or show is about. And this comes directly from an agreed statement of facts in Twitchell's trial. So I'm going to read directly from that, and it's going to give you just a little snip of what the show is. So Dexter, as referred to in this trial, is a popular book and television series in which the main character, named Dexter Morgan, works as a blood spatter analyst with the Miami Metro Police Department. Dexter's father recognized his son to be a sociopath at a young age. Dexter is also a serial killer who was trained by his father, who believed Dexter's homicidal nature could not be eliminated, to choose his victims on moral grounds. The attempted moral basis for the killing is called the Code. Another part of the Code is that Dexter's father urged the importance of appearing normal to the outside world. Simple human acts like smiling for pictures or acting sad during funerals do not come natural to Dexter. Dexter Morgan uses distant locations for his killings to take place and goes to great lengths to dispose of all evidence of his crimes. The rooms he uses are covered in plastic. He frequently dismembers the bodies of the deceased and usually disposes of the remains by throwing them overboard from his boat into the bay. Dexter's dark passenger is more heavily referred to in the books and is both his alter ego and his desire to kill. For example, he will refer to himself as we when he is killing his victims in the book. In the TV show, it is used just to personify his need to kill and isn't treated as a fully formed alter ego. Now, as I was reading that, earlier we talked about choosing his victims on moral grounds. What is not specified here is that Dexter killed bad people. So we're talking rapists, murderers, pedophiles, who were acting on their desires, right? He would stalk them and make sure that they were actually guilty before he would kill them. So he was a murderer who killed bad guys.
Right. And the show does a good job of, you know it's bad, but you're also not seeing him as a villain.
Yeah, he's an anti-hero kind of deal.
They really paint the picture. Yeah, they do a good job of it.
I think so.
But it is a very good show. But if you haven't seen the show, you'll still understand what we're talking about today based off of what Lindsay just explained.
Yeah, and we'll note when things are kind of overlapping a bit. If you haven't watched it, though, go watch it. Great show.
Lindsay said it at the beginning of the episode, but the victim's name was John Altinger. And he was born April 28th of 1970, and he was really into new technology. He got his first computer when he was just 12 years old, and he also had a big love for motorcycles. When he first went missing, one of the first things his friends thought was suspicious was that his motorcycle was left uncovered in the parking garage. And he took very good care of it, so that was bizarre. So typically, because of that, he would never leave his bike uncovered, especially if he was going away for an extended period of time. He was also an avid paintballer and had his own equipment. Those close to him described him as being very giving, affectionate, and quiet. One of John's friends was Dexter Killer. They met on a dating website, but realized that they were more friends than anything romantic. When talking about him, Deb said, quote, "He loved to get people to open their minds and think outside the box. He was a positive, upbeat person who tried to get people to turn their negative thoughts into positive thoughts. He sounds like a great guy."
He really does.
John called Deb Sunshine and typically wrote jokes or smiley faces when he would email her. So keep that in mind. As John got closer to 40, he was more serious about looking for a partner. He asked Deb if they could be more, but she said that they should just remain friends, and then they stopped talking. He reached out to her in the summer of 2008 to discuss it again, but she didn't respond. John had plans with one of his friends, and his name was Dale Smith, on October 12th of 2008. He was actually going to give him a motorcycle lesson. When he talked with Dale, he had mentioned that he had a date scheduled with a woman named Jen, and that he was excited for it. Dale said that the circumstances surrounding the date were a little unusual, though. John didn't have an address, and instead of having an address, it was just these bizarre instructions on where to meet behind a garage. Dale asked John to call him when he got there and give him the address. And it's all over the place, like the actual instructions that he had written down, and they are very weird.
But also very specific. He was able to get there.
Yeah, the instructions were very specific on like where to turn and what to do, and that the garage would be slightly open for him.
Mm-hmm.
So very weird thing to say for a first date. Meet me. You don't say like, meet me at this restaurant or meet me here. No, meet me in this like back alley garage.
I think that, so from conversations that we'll talk about in a second, it's clear that they were potentially meeting up just for like a one night hangout, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's strange that they didn't meet in a public place, but I do think it's bizarre that it was like, meet me in a garage.
Yes. And we'll talk about more instructions at a later time as well. So John called Dale when he got to the garage, for his date with Jen, and he told Dale that Jen wasn't there. He went on to explain that he met a man in the garage who told him he was a filmmaker. The filmmaker went on to show John some of the movie props, including a fake gun.
Weird.
Very weird.
William Stanek, who was a friend and co-worker of John's, testified about messages that he had received from him. So John had messaged William that he was planning to meet a woman, Jen, and he had met her off of Plenty of Fish, and that they were meeting for them to have sex. And he explained the bizarre instructions to him, and William was also like, this is weird.
Mm-hmm.
So he told Dale, he also told William, like, hey, it's weird that this is what happened. Like, I got there, she wasn't there, a guy was there, this is strange. But what he shared with William as well was the messages that Jen sent John later, because John ends up going back to the garage.
Mm-hmm.
And so the message that he got was, I want to play very much, but I have to be cautious, which I'm sure you understand. On a lighter note, you said you have 4 days off. How long can I keep you for if I choose? Maybe you should pack for a few days, LOL. The next message said, I'll leave the garage door partly open for you to sneak into.
That's so weird.
Ooh. It's weird. I could see that if you're like, trying to hook up with somebody.
You don't want the neighbors to know, or yeah.
Yeah, like you're not like, I need to like fully vet this person. You're not going to marry them,
Fair.
The last time Dale heard from John was an email he got later that same night. And in the email, John said he was going back to the garage to meet Jen. And remember earlier, we said that on the 12th, he was supposed to meet Dale to give him motorcycle lessons.
Mm-hmm.
He never showed up.
And he seemed like he was a very good friend, and he would like be there when he said he was going to be.
Yes. So when John was meeting Jen and the conversations that he had during that day with his friends, that all happened on October 10th. So October 10th passes by. They get to the night. They don't hear from him. The next day, they don't hear from him. He doesn't show up to hang out with Dale. Then on October 13th, John's boss, Desmond Hart, received a resignation email from John. He followed up with the email to say like, hey, like, where should I send your last check? But he never got a response. On that same day, Deb, Dale, and William and other friends received an email from John. And from what it seems, it wasn't just like a mass email where like everybody who was on his email list got it. They were different. They varied. In the emails, he said he met up with a woman named Jen. She was taking him on an impromptu trip to Costa Rica for several months, and he wouldn't be back until December 10th.
A specific date?
Yes. And he was a relatively, I describe it as chronically online about myself, right? Like he existed on the internet before the internet was how we know it today. There were lots of articles that talked about that he had like really strong friendships with people who he had met online and like talked to through message boards in the late 90s, long-term friendships. All that to say that he did a lot of speaking textually. So he was doing things like communicating with friends via email on a regular basis. So people were able to look at this and go, this is not him.
Right. And if you notice, we're saying that he emailed people frequently, right?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't text them with his phone. He was typically on his computer emailing them.
Yes. And this is all from email too. So in Deb's email, he didn't call her Sunshine and he didn't have jokes and there were no emojis. And she like read it and was like, this is weird. Like, is he mad at me? That's how different it was. With William, the email started off with, hey man. And so he was immediately like, that's not how he talks. And that's not how we talk. This is weird. And Dale reads it and is like, John lived in Hawaii for a little while. He hated the heat. He wouldn't want to go on vacation for 3 months to someplace that's hot. So he's also like, this isn't right.
Mm-hmm.
And Dale emailed back and asked, quote unquote, John, who would be picking up John's brother from the airport. There was no brother coming into the airport. Dale was sending this as a trap, hoping that the person would respond being like, oh, I have it covered or something like that.
Yeah.
So he would know that it wasn't John, but he never got a response.
No, they knew the trap.
Yeah. So when the weird email about Costa Rica was sent, John's mother, Elfrida, was on her way to Mexico. And then a few days later, his friends and law enforcement also began reaching out to her about it. So the date is on the 10th. The emails are on the 13th. And then a few days after that, people see that John's MSN Messenger status changed to, quote, I've got a one-way ticket to heaven and I'm not coming back, period.
That's weird.
Very weird. Very strange. And also unnecessarily tongue-in-cheek.
Yes. Yes. And for those that don't know what MSN Messenger was, I just thought about that. I'm like, people might not know.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I feel elderly.
But think of like being able to message someone online and it's attached to your email address and it's kind of like AOL Messenger.
Mm-hmm.
But
Or
the
AIM?
MSN version, AIM, yeah.
Yeah.
But I use that one all the time. I don't know if you did, but I used both.
Oh, you were a Messenger person? I was an AIM gal.
I had both.
I had 1,000 AIM screen names. I had the MSN Messenger, but I never really used it. But the idea is like, if you were going to be away from your computer, but online, you would have this status up. Depending on who you were and the age you were, it might be different. For me, it was dumb quotes or like vague statements.
Emo song lyrics.
Yeah. He was an adult at this time. So presumably he wasn't posting stuff like that, but we don't know.
Right.
So because of this strangeness, he's not showing up. He's not answering calls. They've gotten this strange email that clearly isn't him. Dale and some of John's other friends go to the police. And the police are like, we don't have enough for a search warrant. We can't go into his home. And his friends are like, not good enough. We'll go check his home.
I do the same.
They enter his home through the first floor window. Notice how we said enter. And they notice pretty quickly that it doesn't look like John went on vacation. First off, there's dirty dishes that look like he cooked earlier that day. His bed's not made. It's like messy. It doesn't look like he was planning to come back in 3 months. It looks like he was planning to come back in a couple hours. If you were leaving 3 months, you wouldn't leave dirty dishes in the sink, right?
No.
They also found his passport, which he would need if he was going to leave the country, and his shaving kit. So would also need that.
Right.
Based on his apartment looking like he was going to return, the emails and the weird status message, and the fact that John's 2005 red Mazda 3 was missing, police finally decided to start looking for him. And the first place they looked was airport parking lots because they were like, well, he said he was going to Costa Rica. And it's like, are you listening?
Right. And it sucks that it takes so much to convince them. Like, yeah, our friend is missing.
Yeah.
The friends normally know.
Yeah.
So law enforcement was able to use directions John had forwarded to his friends to the location where he was supposed to meet Jen. It was a garage, like she had stated, but it was being rented by a man named Mark Twitchell. In Twitchell's initial statements to police, he explained that he rented the garage to film a short horror film titled House of Cards. All I think of is the TV show.
Agreed. Yes.
So the movie was about a married man who was lured from a dating site to a garage and was murdered. Sounds kind of familiar, right? Law enforcement asked Twitchell to meet them at the garage so that they could look around, and he agreed to do so. In his first interview with authorities, he was interviewed by Detective Mike Tabler. And during the interview, he spent an abnormally long period of time talking about movies that he had plans to make.
He was also so incredibly calm during this.
Yeah.
One of the most calm conversations I've ever seen of a person being interrogated. He gets tired later on through it, but he's weird. He's very calm. Calm like he has nothing to hide.
Exactly. And he didn't think he was ever going to get caught. He thought he was a genius.
He really did.
So, in his statements, Twitchell explained that when he got a call from the constable to meet him at the garage on the 18th of October, they encountered a padlock on the door that they had never seen before. He had also gotten several calls from a company that managed his rental, and he began to worry that someone else was using the garage without his knowledge. He went into the garage with law enforcement after the lock was cut and noticed that it didn't look like the last time he was there. For example, the lights were left on, some of the duct tape and a few of the trash bags had been used, and he specified that they had only used a few trash bags and now half the box was missing.
I just feel if I was walking into a space and I was either one, genuinely concerned that someone had broken into the space and done something, or two, was trying to act as though that was the case, I might not be so into the inventory of trash bags, right? I wouldn't be trying to like spin a narrative. I would be like, hey, it looks like big things are moved. I wouldn't be like, oh, we only used a few trash bags and now more than half of them are gone.
Right.
That's a weird place to go.
It's not a detail that you'd probably notice that quickly.
Yeah, and it's also drawing attention to the fact that so many trash bags have been used when you shouldn't have had to use that many trash bags for what you were supposedly doing if it was you.
Right. Another detail that he brought up is a steel drum that had been used as a trash can was now a different color. So he thought that it had been used as a fire pit.
Again, we're trying to tell a story.
Yeah.
He's trying to lead them in a direction that is too close to what could have happened, you know?
Yeah, we'll talk about that. But yeah, he's giving a lot of detail here.
Yeah, and this is like in his actual like written statement to police, he writes, I think it was used as a fire pit. This isn't like us inferring, like he actually said fire pit.
Right. Twitchell explained that the previous Friday, which would have been the 10th, he had left around 5:30 p.m., and he didn't see anyone around that time. One of the exchanges in the interview is this. Tabler, now it's me. I'm just thinking about this. I mean, it's kind of odd that you're filming that kind of thing. Twitchell, Tabler. And we end up going to the garage because of a missing person. Twitchell, yeah. Tabler, who supposedly went there. Then Twitchell says, that's really freaky too. And as soon as they called me on the phone, as soon as Maxwell called me and said that, you know, this is what's going on, I got this weird chill.
I mean, he's not even a good actor. And Maxwell, by the way, is the constable who met him there. But we don't talk about this, but the next person that interviews him is like, you're not a good actor. And he's like, I never said I was an actor. I'm a producer and a writer. And he's like, no, but we can tell you're lying, is what I'm saying. And he's like,
yeah.
That Pokemon meme where he's like, what? You know?
Yeah.
He absolutely thinks he is just the smoothest guy.
Really? Yeah. And it's insane that he just thought it would be that easy.
Yeah.
Detective Tabler specifically asked whether he met anyone at the garage, and Twitchell replied no. Tabler also asked Twitchell whether the name Jen meant anything to him, and again, Twitchell responded no.
So after the interview, he goes home, and in terms of order of events, he has a daughter who is less than a year old that his wife has been with and she hasn't had a break. So I think they switch off, and then he sleeps, and then once they're both awake again, he's like, this is what's going on. And so they start talking about other things that had happened in the past couple of weeks that were a little weird. And he's like, oh, maybe I should write to the detective that I spoke with and just fill him in on these details. And his wife Jess is like, great idea. So he does. And so this is the other information he includes in that email. So the first thing was that on October 8th, Twitchell had met a friend at Southgate Mall, and they decided that they were going to carpool to the show they were going to, and they used the friend's car. Now, when he got back to his car looked normal, but the doors were unlocked. And so when he got inside, he noticed that a few things were taken. Sunglasses, receipts, a Western Union receipt with his home address, and rental receipts from the garage with the garage address on them. So this is on the 8th. Amanda, are you worried about any of those things? Someone breaks into your car and steals your sunglasses and some trash. Are we freaked out?
So in today's world, when it has your address on it, that is a little bit of a fear, because that is like rings of people where they target primarily people that are parked at the airport.
Yeah, but I mean, it's at the mall, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I would notice that otherwise.
Yeah. So nothing of value is missing, but he files a police report. Interesting. Almost like you were trying to begin a story of someone having the address to the garage and breaking into places. Maybe. I don't know. Then on October 12th, he, his wife, and his daughter were coming home from Thanksgiving dinner. Remember, they're in Canada, so October makes sense. And he noticed that the front door was completely unlocked. And their locking mechanism was a deadbolt and then a doorknob lock. And in his statement, he says his wife is very intense about making sure that the door is shut and locked. So it would be strange if it was unlocked. And when they came in, there was nothing missing from the home. So he just chalked it up to maybe we left it unlocked. So keep in mind just some dates again. October 10th is when Jen and John have their date. October 12th is when he doesn't show up for his friend. October 13th, we have these emails going around. And it's after that that police step in. The next date in his email is October 15th. And he said he was on his way to his garage after buying some new cleaning supplies that he had purchased. And one of the reasons he had bought new supplies is because they had filmed one of the more gory scenes with the fake blood, which was corn syrup and food dye. So it would be very sticky. So he was on his way back to do some more cleaning. And on his way, he stopped to take a call. And just as he finished his phone call, someone knocked on his car window. Twitchell would later describe the person as excited, easygoing, but like a kind person. Said he was white, 6'2", with a medium build, black hair, and a Celtic knot tattoo on the right side of his neck. And he also described what he was wearing as a green windbreaker, jeans, and black shoes. He said that the person introduced themselves as Mark, which is also his name. And he was like, I remember because it was my name and that's weird. I'm like, okay, interesting detail, guy.
Easy name to remember.
Yeah. And the person was like, do you want to buy my car from me? And Twitchell's like, what do you mean? And we're going to say Mark as the seller of the car and Twitchell as Twitchell, right? So Twitchell's like, what do you mean? And Mark's like, well, I've hooked up with a wealthy woman who's taking me on a trip and she's going to buy me something brand new. So I don't even care what I get for this. And so he's like, how much money do you have on you? And Twitchell's like, I have $40. And Mark's like, sold $40 for my 2005 Mazda. It's a 3-year-old car. So believable, right? And Twitchell's like, this is weird. Okay. Either one, I'm super lucky and I'm getting a car for $40, or this is stolen. Worst case scenario, I'll check it out after I buy it and I'm out $40. Best case scenario, I've got a newish car.
But that's not how you buy cars. There's paperwork involved.
That's not how you buy cars. It's not how any of this is done. So Twitchell's like, follow me back to my garage. And then Mark's like, yes, sounds good. So he follows them back. Then Twitchell's like, once we got into the garage, Mark started to get a little nervous and quiet and impatient. And Twitchell's like, here's the $40. And the guy's like, here's proof of insurance and registration. And they look legitimate. I have seen some sources that say that there was a bill of sale that he signed to. Too specific, and you would have that documentation afterwards if that was the case.
Right.
But then the guy leaves. The statement doesn't say, but we're presuming that like he left on foot since he left his car there. And after he left, that's when Twitchell notices that the car's a manual transmission. And so he's like, I don't know how to drive stick. This is in my garage. I need it to not be in my garage. He says that he planned to check to see if there were any liens or if the car was stolen that following Monday.
It's a long time to wait.
But he just hadn't gotten around to it, right? If I thought I was in possession of stolen goods, I would immediately call the police because I wouldn't want people to think that I stole it.
Right.
But he doesn't know how to drive stick. So he calls his friend, Josh Hanatuk. And this is the same person who went to that show with him on October 8th, by the way. And he's like, can you move this car until I have time to check if there's anything going on with it? And the guy's like, yeah, sure. Why not? I'll go park it at my parents' house. I guess I'll get them in trouble for stealing a car.
Right.
And when the car is moved, he gets the license plate. So he takes it off of the car.
Which is also very weird, especially if it's possibly a stolen car.
Well, from my understanding, the idea is he's like, oh, I need that to go look information up. You could write it down.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, in 2008, phones could take very basic pictures, but pictures.
Yeah, it could take a picture of a license plate. It'd be fine. Also, he had a video camera. Like, he could video that bad boy if he wanted to.
Yeah, for sure. So the next interview was with Detective Bill Clark. He was extremely suspicious of Twitchell, and he didn't hide it.
This is the person who I was talking about earlier who was like, you're not a good actor.
Yeah. Well, he really wasn't.
Like, he comes in hot. No, he's not.
Yeah. During the interview, he told him his friends were telling them things. So he was like, you better tell me because your friends are telling me already.
Mm-hmm.
So when the police interviewed the people that were involved with the movie House of Cards, they asked the people how much of the fake blood actually splattered. And the response was they didn't really have any blood splatter anywhere. And at that point, the detective knew that there were lots of visible blood splatter in the garage. So if they didn't see it in the movie, where did this blood splatter come from?
Mm-hmm.
Yet during this, Twitchell claimed that the blood splatter that they saw and investigated was actually just fake blood. Don't worry, it's part of the movie. But again, people in the movie are like, that wasn't there.
This is part of it where I'm like, did you even pay attention in Dexter? Because he was literally a blood splatter analyst.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing else, blood splatter should be on your mind.
And in the show, he made sure that blood wasn't anywhere when he'd actually kill people. Like, he used so much plastic. Basically, he'd line a room top to bottom in plastic to make sure that it didn't get anywhere and you couldn't find it later.
Yeah.
But this guy didn't do that and just tried to pass it off as part of his movie. Also, when they were speaking to one of the actors, they had mentioned that they were unnerved when they got to the filming location, the garage, because they realized that the weapons were real. And the actor worried because he hadn't told anyone where he was going.
Fair. And also, all of them are real except for the gun. That was plastic. It's important to note later.
Right. One of Twitchell's friends, his name was Jason Howitson, also worked on House of Cards. He received an email from Twitchell on October 23rd, 2008, that said, quote, "For now, I have to recommend that everyone stop talking to the police. You have the right to silence, and you should exercise that right."
That's not suspicious at all, is it?
Not suspicious at all. Like, please don't talk to the police. I'm not going to give you a reason why. Even if he said, hey, it might lead to us having to stop the movie. Or like, this is how it can impact me. But no, it's just don't talk to them. You don't have to.
Yeah.
In his email, he said police should do their own jobs and to refuse if the police ask them to come in for a statement. There is so much evidence that was found in this case. We're going to start by discussing the physical evidence that was found. Over the course of the investigation, police found the following items. One of the items was like a to-do list or a reminder list of some kind. And the list included kill room clean sweep, destroy wallet contents, return Addie of Vic, ship phone wallets on. That is not a normal to-do list in any way, shape, or form.
I am a to-do list person. Writing things down helps me. This just doesn't feel like a good idea.
No. There are also notes on directions to John's home.
Woof.
How did he meet John, right? Like, he made up this weird story about how he got John's car.
Yep.
But he called him a different name. Very weird. So in Twitchell's car, they found a receipt for a goalie mask, a hunting knife, and a sheath. And there were also bloodstains in the trunk, which, again, if that's part of a movie, why would your trunk personally be used for it?
Yeah, well, and also, why would the knife and sheath be in your car if that's a prop?
Yeah, exactly. There were also bloodstains in John's car. And then in Twitchell's residence, they found diluted bloodstains in the washing machine, and then various receipts for things like a 45-gallon steel drum, coveralls, caulk, combination lock, handcuffs, drop cloths and gloves, and 4 bottles of red food coloring and corn syrup. So, like, maybe some of those could be part of the movie, but, like, really?
Yeah. It is clear that the movie was being made. Like, that was happening. It seems he was dual purposing some of the equipment. He was like, this is for my movie and for this. Because, like, again, he said he bought that steel drum as a trash can.
Right.
Why wouldn't you just buy a trash can?
A lot cheaper, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the lock is interesting because remember when he went with police, he was like, this isn't my lock here. So, like, where did that lock come from if he didn't just buy it here? Now, in the garage, there's lots more evidence. They found receipts for 24-inch long metal pipes, a hunting knife and a sheath, a game processing kit, which included a caper knife, meat cleaver, skinner knife, boning or fillet knife, shears, a saw, carving fork, and a handle with a sharpener edge. So, an entire kit. They all also had what appeared to be blood on them. And then they also found inside the garage a rib spreader kit, but luckily that did not have blood on it. They also found a stun baton that could deliver up to 800,000 volts.
Woof.
Seems like a lot. A 24-inch pipe with tape on one of the ends. And then scrapings of tissue were taken from the inside and outside of the non-taped edge of that pipe. Dr. Graham Dowling, the chief medical examiner, concluded that there was skin, fat, skeletal muscle, fibrous tissue, and bone on the pipe, but could not definitely state whether it was from a human based off of his visual inspection. At trial, they described the pipe as, quote, almost blood-soaked. That's really sad.
Yeah.
There were 2 more pipes found as well that had charred material on them, and fragments of a tooth were also found. Dr. Lowell Reimer, a forensic dentistry consultant, concluded that the tooth fragment was from a human's incisor tooth. Luminol was used to see if there were traces of blood, and when they used it, they saw that a large portion of the middle of the garage glowed, which showed that there was a large pool of blood. They also did some DNA testing, and the tooth fragment and a piece of pelvic bone were both ground down so that it could be tested for DNA. Blood from the trunks of both cars were also tested for DNA, and all of them were a match for John.
Fuck. And this is a lot of physical evidence, is it not? You don't often see this much.
No, and he was just so convinced that everyone would just buy his movie story that I feel like he didn't even try.
Yeah, I agree. So Twitchell had a Facebook profile. Amanda, do you remember when you could get onto Facebook and you could have a name that wasn't yours and Facebook wouldn't freak out?
Right. Like, because nowadays, like, people can report like you're trying to be someone else or whatever, and it gets taken down fairly quick. I also remember when you had to have a college email address to have a Facebook, and then that was a little more tight-lipped, I guess.
Yeah.
It's gone through a lot of changes.
Or you had to have an invitation to get a Gmail account.
Yes.
What a time.
I saw my Hotmail because of that.
She does. And I bring this up because Twitchell had a Facebook profile with the name Dexter Morgan, which is the character from Dexter. And there was a woman named Renee Waring who came across the account and was like, I like Dexter. I'd like to be friends with, whoever made this account. Mm-hmm. And at the height of their friendship, Renee and Twitchell were talking multiple times a day. And she described the interactions as kind of flirty. Now, in one of their conversations, before John disappeared, they were talking about how to commit a murder and get away with it. And he gives her unnecessarily specific ideas on how to do so. But he also, at the same time, is mansplaining the show Dexter. He is simply just saying what Dexter does in the show. Mm-hmm. Like, this isn't necessary to do. He's like, get a kill room, use a stun gun. Okay, Dexter doesn't use a stun gun. He uses medicine and a syringe. But pulverize the jawbone, remove teeth and fingertips to avoid identification. He talks about bludgeoning someone in the head with a copper pipe, with tape on the end, by the way. Very specific. Dexter doesn't do that, but he also says you should then dismember them and throw them into Lake Erie because she lived in Michigan. So it's very similar. Mm-hmm. And also then very specific to how he would kill someone.
Right. There's details that aren't found in the show, but they are found in John's case.
Mm-hmm. So then, in a conversation that's after this, he tells her that he crossed a line on Friday night and that he liked it. Given that their conversations have been about this kind of stuff, she took this as him having killed someone.
Yeah, as anyone would.
Mm-hmm. Now, Twitchell will later say that he was cheating on his wife. We'll talk about that just briefly because he's a scumbag because he's cheating on his wife, but more because he's a murderer,
Yeah.
But he says that it's because he crossed the line with another woman, not because of the murder. But I don't think that's true. No one thinks that's true.
No.
But okay. So pretty soon after, she reached out to police and was like, here's this chat history. It's suspicious. It's unclear whether he was already arrested and in the news at this point. I don't know when that went through because it's all happening kind of in mid-October.
Yeah.
It's after he's been questioned and it's probably on the news. So, Amanda, this part is the fucking most wild to me. I've actually never seen anything in a case where I've been like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen a criminal do in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Hands down, the dumbest thing.
It's no Chad Duvall.
Oh, this is worse. This is worse than Chad Duvall to me.
It is pretty bad. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're moving on. So we just talked about Facebook chats, and we're going to talk about another piece of digital evidence that police find. And outside of DNA, I think it's one of the most damning things they find. Mm-hmm. So they're searching his computer that is covered in Spider-Man stickers. I just feel like that's important to note.
Bizarrely put on there too. Like that's how my son puts stickers on things.
Yeah, they are put on there like a child, and his daughter is like 8 or 9 months old, so they weren't from her. It's just him.
Exactly. Yeah.
But okay, they find a document in his deleted files titled SK Confessions. Police are like, does that mean serial killer confessions?
Absolutely.
The code is not coding here. We're not like, he's no Zodiac. He's just like, they won't know what SK means.
No one would.
So from our understanding, this was found before they had received some of the DNA testing. So they were like still trying to get 100% foolproof case. Before we get into the contents, let's talk about some of the names in the document. In the document, the narrator's wife, named Tess, Twitchell's wife, her name's Jess. The narrator's daughter is called Zoe. Twitchell's daughter is Chloe. The woman that the narrator is cheating on his wife with is Lacey. However, who Twitchell is actually cheating on his wife with is an ex-girlfriend whose name is Tracy.
He thinks out of the box.
He really does. He also, in the story, talks about designing a Celtic knot tattoo for Lacey. And in real life, he did that for Tracy. And he talked about the fictional Mark having a Celtic knot tattoo. So he just likes those as tattoos, I guess. Fucking bizarre. So let's get into what this document said. Here's what it starts with. This is the story of my progression into becoming a serial killer. Like anyone just starting out in a new skill, I had a bit of trial and error in the beginning of my misadventures. Allow me to start from the beginning, and I think you'll see what I mean. I don't remember the exact place and time it was that I decided to become a serial killer, but I remember the sensation that hit me when I committed to the decision. It was a rush of pure euphoria. I felt lighter, less stressed, if you will, at the freedom of the prospect. There was something about urgently exploring my dark side that greatly appealed to me, and I'm such a methodical planner and thinker. The very challenge itself was enticing to behold.
What a thinker.
What a thinker. I cannot tell you, one of the things that I like to do that I don't talk about a lot is writing, and I read a lot. And I can tell you it was one of the worst written things I've ever seen. It was just bad. And whenever he's writing anything, I would just say he's trying to appear smarter than he is. So he's using words that don't always make the most sense. We'll talk more about that later when we read something else that he wrote. But it's just so bad. But the poorly written narrative goes into how the narrator would lure his victims, single men, from dating sites, and he would break into their apartments to steal their valuables after he murdered them. The narrator continues to describe where he would murder people: a garage, the tools he would use, a game processing kit, a stun baton, a hunting knife, and how he would dispose of their bodies by burning them in a steel drum. Another quote from the document is, "You see, in my day life, I'm an independent filmmaker, and everything that I have in the garage could be easily explained away as props for filming a psychological thriller."
Why the fuck did he write all of this down? For who?
As he said, serial SK confessions, baby. What the literal fuck? So after there's this supposition of here's what I would do and how I would do it and who I am, he talks then about specific things. So he goes into detail about luring a man to a garage, then the man leaving, then convincing the guy to come back, just like he did with John. The document also goes into specific details of stabbing a man to death before dismembering him, all of which is recounted with joy. Pausing for a moment to take it in, right?
So dumb.
And he's like, this is just writing. This is just writing. This isn't what happened, right? This is just a story. Now, one part of the narrative that wasn't accounted for already, that's in that document, is the first victim, which is not John. It's somebody who got away. And we're going to talk more about that in just a moment.
Yes. And if this is just writing, I don't understand how he thought he could explain away the first part that he said where the person left and then came back based off of the emails that John's friends have, right? Saying that he left and then came back to see the girl, Jen. And then also the first victim that got away is going to be very interesting when we get to it. But anyway, So on Halloween of 2008, police lured Twitchell from his parents' home where he was working on his costume. I just imagine that he lives in the basement and his parents are just I wish he'd move out.
He didn't, but it has that vibe. He was working on his Iron Man costume.
Yeah. They had someone pose as an investor for his next movie project and asked that he meet them at a particular cafe. Which, the first question I thought of is, why would an investor want to talk with him? But he did have a production company, and he did have some other small films that did get pretty popular. Judging from how he wrote this, I wouldn't think that happened, right? How he wrote this.
You would not think so.
Particular thing, but apparently some people did like him and enjoy his work. But anyway, so investor asked to meet him at a cafe. Then, a tactical team apprehended Twitchell when he was about 3 blocks from his parents' house. And he was so scared he peed himself.
I love this. And I also love that particular detail comes from a 48 Hours episode where they're talking about the case, where Detective Clark is talking about it, and he is filled with so much joy about that fact. You could tell he's he peed himself with joy. Little shitbird.
Right. Well, and especially because he is so into himself, right? He's no one would ever know what I'm doing. And he's now this investor's talking to me. He really thought, I'm moving up in this world. And then it's no, fuck you, dude. you're a terrible
Yeah.
person. You're going to prison. But anyways, so law enforcement reached out to the local media to see if they could find any other victims of Twitchell, given, that writing that explained that there was a first victim. In early November of 2008, Gilles Tetreault told a friend about a horrific encounter that he had experienced. After he explained what happened, his friend said, you should reach out to law enforcement because he had just saw a news segment about what police were looking for, being the first victim.
Mm-hmm.
And his friend was like, that could be you. And I want to say initially he didn't go to the police after what we're going to talk about happened because he was so embarrassed and he was like afraid that they would think of him differently, right?
Yeah.
Which is sad because a lot of people feel that way for many different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So the story that Gilles told was nearly an exact match of what police had seen written in Twitchell's SK confessions document. So in Gilles' story, the woman he was going to meet was named Sheena, and she had told him the garage door would be half open when he got to the destination. And again, they were like convoluted directions on how to get to this weird garage, no address. So then he gets to the garage and he ducks in, to get into the half open garage, and it's very dark inside. Immediately, someone came up behind him and put him into a bear hug. Then the person struck him several times with a black object. Gilles turned around to look at the person attacking him and saw a person who was wearing a hockey mask without a mouth area. And the mask actually is a little weird looking. Like, it doesn't look like your typical hockey mask when you're looking at the evidence pictures. It's weird.
Yeah, it's an amber color and it has black streaks on it. And then it has that section carved out of it.
Right. He said that the attacker kept triggering the black object and that it would make noise and turn blue. Gilles said it was like a bug zapper, but it didn't really hurt, which is interesting. I feel like maybe it wasn't working properly or something because it seems like it should have.
It might have been adrenaline.
That's true. They were staring at one another until the attacker pulled out a gun and yelled for Gilles to get on the ground. So, of course, he did. He got down on the garage floor, and then the attacker put duct tape over his eyes, which sounds very painful.
Ow. Ow.
Yeah. He remembered how he was worried that he hadn't told anyone where he was going, so no one would know where he was. Gilles heard a metal jingling sound, and he was concerned that he was fiddling with his belt. He was worried that the attacker was going to pull out a knife or try to rape him. Gilles decided that he was going to fight back, and he jumped up. He pulled the tape off of his eyes, and then he grabbed the gun. Now, when he grabbed the gun, he realized that it was just plastic, so it wasn't even real. They were still fighting when Gilles rolled out of the garage, got up, and started to run, but then he fell. This is like a classic horror movie rolling out in my head. He felt weak and started to crawl away, but the attacker came out, grabbed him by the legs, and then started dragging him back into the garage. Once he was back in the garage, Gilles was able to get free again and took off running. Once he was on the street, he saw a couple that was walking and he ran over to them. He told them what was going on, and they seemed super stunned, which, I can't imagine someone coming up to me on the street and telling me this. That would be very scary and, just weird.
I would absolutely be terrified.
For sure. These poor people. So, of course, they're stunned. They're like, what the fuck is happening? Then the attacker caught up to Gilles and was shocked that he was with people, of course. And so he started acting like they were friends. He said stuff like, come on, friend. And then acted like he was going to take off the mask.
The only part of this where I'm like, you're Dexter-esque, because they talk about Dexter not knowing how to react in human situations.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to act like someone's friend. He was like, what if friends say to one another? Come on, friend. It also has a JD Vance vibe to it.
That's all I was thinking.
I'm a human who orders donuts. That's what it feels like. It's like, come on, friend. Let's go be pals. That weird awkwardness.
Yeah, let's go do friendly things together as friends.
Yeah, let's do friend things. Where I drag you into a garage.
Right. And then, bizarrely, he just turned and started walking away. He's like, this human thing's not working. I gotta go. So the couple started walking away too. They're like, okay, walk away. They're not sure what the fuck's happening. Gilles said something like, hey, aren't you going to help me out? And the guy turned around, but the woman with him said, leave it. The man and woman later said that they left because they were scared, not because they didn't believe him, which fair. I guess that's hard to decide what you do in that situation until it presents yourself.
Yes.
But also, that really sucks.
Well, and the woman in particular, because she testified, she was like, I could see the guy peering over the fence, watching us.
Yeah.
She was like, I didn't know what to do. And I'm like, I don't know what I would do in that situation. I would hope I would help someone though.
Right. But again, like 2008, not everyone had like their cell phone with them at all times. And like cell phones didn't last as long. Like there could be a lot of other things going on too. So luckily, Gilles got into his truck and was able to drive away. When Gilles got home and looked at his computer, the profile that he was messaging, all of the messages were deleted. In an interview with 48 Hours, Gilles said that he still thinks about the baton and the hockey mask, which, like, fair, that's terrifying. And especially after you find out, like, that could have been you.
Yes.
Like, you narrowly got away from the bizarre thing that he was planning. And Gilles has written his own book. It's called The One Who Got Away, Escape from the Kill Room. And it was published in 2015. And we'll include a link for his book in our show notes.
It absolutely does feel like a horror movie. They're mid-fight, he rolls out, he goes to stand up, he goes down, and then like dragging him back.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine how just heartbreaking that would have felt when you were like, okay, I'm free, and then you're down, and then he's pulling you, and it's like, what the fuck am I going to do?
Yeah.
Clearly, something is going to happen.
Right.
Because if nothing was going to happen, he would have let him leave.
Exactly.
So here we are so far with a document explaining how the narrator of the SK Confessions document would kill someone, how they attacked someone and they got away with a shockingly accurate depiction of what Gilles experienced. Then a subsequent murder by stabbing that the narrator conducts and then dismembers the victim, recounts with joy, no remorse. Very similar. We've got a trunk full of blood, both Twitchell's car and John's car. We've got weapons. We've got bloodstains. We've got DNA. We've got weird to-do lists. We've got, I think I've crossed a line, strange stories about a guy coming to buy a car. We are positively teeming with evidence, right?
Yes.
And yet, during trial, Twitchell still tries to spin the murder as an accident. So let's talk about the explanation that he gave. Per Twitchell, he never intended to kill John, and he was never going to kill Gilles. He was only trying to scare him.
Okay.
He said that his plan was to scare some men that he had met on dating websites so he could create an urban legend that would create buzz for his film, House of Cards.
No.
Disagree. Disrespectfully, I disagree. Because you wouldn't have gone back after Gilles. He was already terrified, right? Like,
yes.
If your plan was to scare someone so that they told people, you wouldn't have called him twice.
But also, he still had the directions on how to get to that garage. Like, and he wasn't freaked out by that. And then also, like, thinking about that, the person got away, right? Gilles got away, had the directions to the garage. And then he uses the same damn garage to do it again and actually kill someone. Like, he's a complete moron.
And in the SK Confessions document, he talks about how he's preoccupied and terrified about getting caught. He thinks that the police are going to come. He keeps thinking it over and over again, but they just never come. So he talks about being afraid that he's going to be caught. And yet, just 1 week later, that is when John and Jen have their date. So again, he's saying that this murder was accidental. So per Twitchell, John comes to that garage the first time. He's like, hello, I am a dude, not Jen. And he lies to him and says like, but Jen's on her way. She's just stuck in traffic. He then has like a fake phone call with Jen that is not like a 2-minute phone call. Like it's at least a few minutes. And in his fake phone call, he's like, oh, she's not going to be here for 30 minutes. And then he explains like about the props and shit and explains like what the room is. And then John leaves. Then there's the messages of like, let's play, come on over. The garage will be half open. And Twitchell says, yeah, that was me. I wanted to scare him. But when Twitchell explains to John what he was doing, John gets angry, which I feel like is a reasonable response to being catfished.
Yes.
So they're arguing, being nasty to each other verbally, and Twitchell goes to walk away. And when he walks away, he says he feels a blow to his lower back. I have not seen a description of him saying that there was a weapon, so I think John punched him in his lower back.
That's a weird place to punch someone.
That's a weird fucking place to punch someone. Exactly where I'm headed. If I am about to enter an altercation with someone, if I'm like being like beefing with somebody verbally, and they punch me in the lower back, I'm probably going to look at them like, that was a weird choice. You should probably leave. I think that the bizarreness of it would diffuse the situation because it's such a strange place to punch someone. Tiny Cat said hello during that. It's a weird place to punch someone unless the person's like twice your height.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless John was 3 feet tall, because we don't know what their bodies were proportionally to each other. But that's a strange place to punch someone.
Either way.
Right?
Yeah.
Either way. And it's also a strange place to say someone punched you.
It is.
Either way. Twitchell's like, I get a blow to my lower back. And he says he turns around and pushes John. Now, it's at this point that Twitchell's like, oh gosh, what if he goes after my laptop? Because presumably that's where he was catfishing him. And he's like, my movie's on there. Like, my scripts are on there. I don't want him to damage that. So Twitchell moves to block his pathway. But right next to the laptop are those, those 24-inch long pipes with the tape on the end. Mm-hmm. Those are right next to his laptop. That's a weird place to keep pipes.
Yeah.
Just saying. So then he says that John grabbed a pipe. So Twitchell says that he is dodging John's swings, but on the third hit, he hits him in the elbow. And so Twitchell grabs the pipe, twists it out of his hand, and starts swinging back. And Twitchell says, like, oh, I just kept swinging because he was pulling me forward. John's still punching him even while being bludgeoned with this pipe.
I don't see how that could happen, but okay.
I also don't understand how that could happen because, again, later we'll find that the pipe is blood-soaked, which means that there was a significant amount of injuries.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, to be able to have the force to really punch someone in a way that is actually life-threatening, I just don't see. And also, you're the person with the pipe. The other person is punching you. You're fine. So, Twitchell said that it was, quote, a mangled mass of swings, which is just another gross example of, for him being like, I'm an artist when trying to explain this.
Mm-hmm.
A mangled mess of swings is a great line for once, but unnecessary. We were fighting. It was chaotic. I don't really know. It's a blur. It's just mangled mess of swing isn't how people talk, but whatever. So then John gets the pipe back and is like, my head, you fuck. And then John comes to Twitchell again with the pipe. So Twitchell grabbed his knife because why was his knife there? And so he's like, I'll pull it out of the sheath so it deters John so he stops. But that doesn't, according to Twitchell. He just keeps coming at him. And then John doesn't even realize that he stabbed him. And he said, I just started to feel this wet sensation around the hand still holding the knife. And I let go instinctively. And then I saw it sticking out of him. Then John stumbled back and collapsed near the garage door where it was open. Mm-hmm. And Twitchell just stood there watching him. The blade was still in his chest, right below his sternum. Twitchell said that after he accidentally killed John, he panicked. After all, the room was designed to look like a kill room because of the movie. At trial, Twitchell teared up when he talked about approaching John's body for the first time.
Fuck him.
Which I fucking hate him. It just feels so fucking rich to be misting up and tearing about someone's death when you wrote about murdering and dismembering them with joy.
Right.
The math is not mathing.
No.
So Twitchell said that the process for dismemberment that he described in SK Confessions was pretty close to what he did to John's body.
You don't say.
So he put John's body in a steel drum and then put that drum in his car. Because remember earlier, he was like, when he was describing what to do, he was like, I'd burn them in a steel drum.
Yeah.
Well, he tries to do that. So he goes to his parents' house and he's like, I'll burn the body there. That doesn't work.
Where the fuck were his parents?
I don't know, but like, what the fuck? So he presumably loads everything back up in his car, and it says that he goes back to the garage the next day. So I don't know if he's just driving around with the steel drum that has John's remains in it, or if he like left it at his parents' house. Unsure. So when he gets back to the garage, he dismembered John more. In the document, which he calls his manuscript, there's joy and excitement, and the person is happy about what they're doing.
Disgusting.
At trial, Twitchell's like, that's the opposite of how I felt. And I just don't see how you would write it like that.
Right.
If what you felt was disgust and guilt and terror and worry, why you would write it like you liked it.
Well, also, and if he's a filmmaker, right, he knows how to convey an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And so he knew what he was doing.
Mm-hmm. So after he was finished dismembering him, those trash bags we mentioned earlier, that's where he put the remains, and then he dumped John's remains into a sewer. He then looked at John's license and used the keys that he had with him to get into his home. He then went on to explain that he emailed people to try to buy himself some time, and that he even stole John's laptop computer and printer just in case he had printed out directions or something on it. This fucking guy.
Right? He's so weird, right? Like, it's not like the typical person we talk about. He's just weird. He writes about murder, but then claims that he doesn't know what he's doing and that he wouldn't follow what he wrote. It's just, like you said at the beginning of the episode, he's so dumb.
Horror writers can write awful things that they don't do. But if you write about something that is really close to how something happened, people are going to think that you did that.
Exactly.
I feel like that's reasonable.
Yes.
From my understanding in the movie for House of Cards, the twist is supposed to be that a killer lures this married guy, kills him. And the twist is that actually didn't happen. It was a story written by a man, but that man is also a killer. But that's just not a story of his things. So that would mean that he made a movie as a murderer about a different type of murder that was committed by a writer that wasn't committed, but was written about by another writer. That is the most convoluted thing I've ever fucking heard of in my life.
Yeah. Like I said, weird.
I'm angry just thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. It's frustrating how stupid and how pompous he was, where he was like, no, I'm just extremely intelligent. No one will ever figure me out. I'm so good at this.
Yeah, it's his arrogance.
Yeah, and like you said, when he's writing all this down, he seems really excited and happy and like he's having the best time of his life. And it's like, how dare you? Like
Yeah, get fucked.
You're just mad that he got to enjoy any piece of his life, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
So in June of 2010, Twitchell gave law enforcement a Google map that would lead them to where the remains would be found. He said that he did this in order to give John's family and friends some closure.
I think he did it just so that it could seem like he actually had remorse.
I think so too.
Like, I think he was trying to be like, it was an accident. It wasn't premeditated.
No, it was.
Mm-hmm.
So during his trial, Twitchell was adamant that the murder was self-defense. Twitchell did not show any emotion when the guilty verdict for the first-degree murder was read in April of 2011. Twitchell filed an appeal for his conviction under the grounds that the jury did not remain impartial since they were never sequestered. He also said that his defense did not adequately represent him.
The last grounds for his appeal was also very strange. So generally, this is Canada, not America. So different system, but similar-ish.
Yeah.
Generally, you can't bring in a person's character into a crime. You can't be like, this is a bad guy, so he committed this murder.
Right.
But here, he was like, they did that. They tried to prove that I was a bad guy, so I committed this murder. Because when you're thinking of evidence like this fucking document, right? Or the fact that he was having like kind of an internet affair with Renee and then a relationship with Tracy and cheating on his wife, all this shit, he seems like a bad fucking guy, right?
Right.
So he's like, oh, you did all that to make people think that I'm a person who could do this. And people looked at the evidence in light of thinking I was this type of person, which I actually don't think is relevant here because all of those facts are relevant because it proves that that was more autobiographical than fiction because the names were matching, symbols were matching up. Like it was overlapping so much that they had to bring in those facts so that they could prove that this was real, not just writing.
Yeah. He later withdrew his appeal.
Good.
Yeah. Steve Lillibuen wrote a book about this case, as well as his letters and interactions with Twitchell. In one of his letters, Twitchell said, quote, I killed John Altinger in a horrific accident of self-defense. After cursorily shoving aside my human sensibilities, I dealt with his remains in a disrespectful manner that traumatized me forever. I don't buy any of this.
Nope.
Lillibuen said that he did not believe that this was true and that he sold his rights to the book so that it may be made into a movie.
I also don't believe that statement because, again, you don't write joyfully over something you feel bad about.
Right. And just to mention this, Steve was writing to Twitchell when he was behind bars, like to get information for his book. So it's not like they knew each other beforehand. He was just writing a book.
Yeah, and Lillibuen learned very quickly that, not surprisingly, Twitchell preferred to talk and interact via letter rather than interviews or phone calls. And he was like, if you're going to write my story, you might as well hear it from me.
Oh yeah, he was like, I still need more attention. So Michael C. Hall, who plays Dexter, was asked about Twitchell and said that he was horrified that his character could have inspired someone. Twitchell later insisted that his crimes were not inspired by Dexter, but like he was a fan and there's a lot of overlap. So I don't know where he would come up with this otherwise.
Before we were recording, Amanda and I were also talking about how it looks as though he even tried to mimic some of the haircut and expressions that Dexter would do in photos.
Yeah. And the photo that comes up like first when you search his name, it's him with his camera. And like he gives Dexter vibes just looking at that picture.
Yeah. And not in a good way.
No, he's like just trying to be him.
Yeah.
So in 2017, Twitchell was allowed to go on an online dating website for inmates. Seems bizarre to me, especially because that's the way that he lured his victims. So they're like, yeah, go ahead, do what you were doing as you were getting ready to kill people. Okay. On the site, there was basic information like his name, the penitentiary that he was in, mailing address, his birthday, as well as what he was convicted of, murder, and what he was interested in, talking to women. His profile said,
prepare to throw up in your mouth. Just prepare to throw up right in your mouth. Amanda, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Will you read this like you think he wants people to read it?
Yes. So his profile said, quote, I was tentative about reaching out because I thought I couldn't offer much and doubted anyone could look past my reputation to see the human being.
Perfect.
But trying is definitely worthwhile if it means finding just one meaningful, mutually fulfilling friendship. No one wants to be your friend, dude.
No one.
My crime doesn't define who I am or represent me at all.
Yes, it does.
I've made some terrible, regrettable choices in the past, and I've come to terms with the consequences.
It sounds like he's talking about drinking an expired protein shake. These aren't regrettable choices. These are awful fucking things.
Now I seek to infuse purpose into my life. Connection is a huge part of that. My creative engine, I can't even say it with a straight face.
I fucking know. I know.
My creative engine never slows. So I produce artwork constantly and craft novels or screenplays to manifest my relentless imagination. Relentless imagination, dude. Like, he copied so much. They should almost sue him for copyright somehow.
Oh, it gets so much worse too. It continues to get worse.
It's hard to say.
I know.
I'm insightful, passionate, and philosophical with a great sense of humor. I enjoy tennis, chess, and clever storytelling. I love that he said clever storytelling. Like, you're not...
Yeah.
He just changed the first letters of people's names.
Yeah.
I love the rain and the music... and the music of artists like Sia, Jackie and Vancho, and Arcade Fire. I mean, I do like Arcade Fire.
If I was Sia, Jackie and Vancho, or Arcade Fire, I'd be like, keep my name out of your mouth.
Right? I'm looking for an interesting, intelligent, open-minded, delightfully imperfect woman to relate to and share amusing observations with, as well as a potentially long weekend every few months if it gets there naturally.
I also, just as a note, I wanted to know what Jackie Evancho sounded like. And she has a stunning voice. The instrumental kind of sounds like a movie score, like the way that it builds. But it is kind of like an opera. And like if you were a man trying to convince women that you cared about women's feelings, I think that you would be like, I like Jackie Evancho.
Ah, okay. So that was his angle?
Yeah, I think so. Again, she's fantastic. I don't know anything about her.
Yeah, I've never heard of her. But
other than what I've just listened to. I don't know how she is as a human, but her voice is beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But I do think that he is like trying to appeal to women.
Yes. Yes.
And I want to punch him straight in the throat.
Of course. He deserves it.
I mean, not like I didn't want to before, but after this, I'm like,
And so just to describe this website, because, we said it was like an inmate dating site, they can't actually interact on the site. So remember how I said it had like his address and like where he was being housed? The person that read the profile and for some reason would be interested in him and communicating with him, they would send a letter to him. And the way that the profile is set up for the person is they fill out a hard copy application and then send it in. And then the site owner puts it up there. The owner of the website, Melissa Fazina, said that she had never rejected anyone's request to be part of the site when interviewed about it. She also noted that while some are in romantic relationships because of the site, there are also people who have found long-lost relatives and have been able to reconnect with them. It is a bizarre site.
It does look like a GeoCities-esque website.
It really does. Because we've brought up the site, and you can bring it up at home. Like, it's interesting. It's CanadianInmatesConnect.com.
It is a dating site. It is very clear about that. Partially by the fact that when you click the first set of pictures, there's a guy showing his abs. They're dating profile kind of photos in there. But what's interesting is that it shows you the crime. And as I was scrolling, it was like murder, 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 murder. And I was like, I don't love this. Is scary.
Yeah, it is scary. Because, yeah, they have, like, their photos in it and then their little, like, blurb.
Mm-hmm.
Bizarre. But a lot of people are, like, into this. Like, when
I know
serial killers go to prison and stuff, like, ugh, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, we looked at the website, and I don't believe his profile is up anymore. So he's not on there.
That's good. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
We also saw other articles where people were saying that they had a problem with like a person who committed a crime against a member of their family. And they're like, and now they're on a fucking dating website. Can I fucking help you?
Right.
No. Valid. So one of the things that really stuck with us about this case, we haven't mentioned yet, but it is that when John's friends were talking to law enforcement, they were very clear and they said, if John hadn't sent those directions to you and you hadn't shared them with us, we don't know if we ever would have figured out what happened to John.
That's sad.
And it is so terrifying to think that in a situation where there is this much physical evidence and digital evidence and just so many what the fucks, that it is possible that Twitchell may not have been caught. That fucks me up.
It does.
And many people, including us, think that if Twitchell had not been caught, he would have continued to kill.
For sure.
That he wasn't a serial killer yet. I think he absolutely would have continued.
Agreed.
So, as we said earlier, he was sentenced to life in prison, but he could apply for parole after 25 years. That would be 2036. That feels way too soon.
It does.
Yeah. I thought that this was a really interesting case as we started to research it because it is the worst fear. You're murdered and then people don't know what happened to you. And what if you aren't in a situation where you told your friends? Gilles came so close that it's just so scary to me.
It is. And that's kind of a good thing to think about, too. If you're going somewhere, if you're meeting someone to purchase something online or whatever, always send someone where you're going, when you're estimated to be there. And then when you leave, call them and let them know that, you know, your actual voice.
Yeah.
Hey, everything's good. I'm heading here or something. I know, like I brought it up. I train dogs. So I'm a person that will be in various places. And every time, like that's the rule of thumb is like I say where I'm going, how long I intend to be there, that I got there. And I normally send like a text with a certain word or something to show like, hey, we're all good. Have a secret word.
Yeah. And if you are a person that doesn't have somebody in your life that you can send that information to, one, you could always have a ledger at your own home that lists the places where you're going. You could, two, have it digitally. Have it in your calendar, the address of where you're going. Put it someplace so that if something happens, you know, because I'm like, what if a person doesn't have a lot of close friends or somebody who wants that information, right? Or say you're going on a first date and you don't want your friends to ask 1,000 questions. You can also say, hey, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to get into it, but I want to stay safe. Here's what you need to know.
Yep. Agreed. It's sad that you have to think that way, but it's true.
It is sad to think that way. If there's any updates to this case, we will include them in our True Crime Digest episodes. And with that, have a great weekend.
Thanks for creeping with us.
Thanks for listening. And as always, a special thank you to our patrons who support us via Patreon.
Please see the link in our show notes to learn more about how you, yes you, can begin to haunt the dump, guard vortexes, or even become a scorching Sasquatch.
Ooh. Also in our show notes, you can find the link to our website, more information on our sources, our social media handles, and our merch store.
We'd love for you to keep creeping with us. So if you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, review, and share the show with your fellow creeps and or ghosts.
I beg of you.